a treat for me to see my dear friend Pat Kenner and Grace Michelson here today. I can recall that if we want to go back and look at the record in the 1970s, I think we did pretty well by education, and it's gone downhill since, and we need people like them back. They did a great job. As I said yesterday, it was a lot of fun being in Pierre in the 1970s because we had control of both houses of the legislature for a few years, and we had a great governor, and we got a lot accomplished. And we need to bring that back. We're now 30 years out with pretty much one-party rule, and we're about 50th in everything. So that's just got to change, and one way to do that is to elect some Democrats. When Jeff kind of gave you my whole background, so I don't have much else to talk about, I wanted to share a little bit of a story here. One of my daughters who left the state and moved to Minnesota because she could make a lot more money, sent me an email this morning, and she said, "Did you hear that Sarah Palin returned to work as the governor of Alaska 3 days after giving birth to her baby? I sure hope she doesn't make that a policy for all women." But here's the story, because this kind of tells, similar to what Jeff was saying about being a Democrat. A woman in a hot air balloon realized she was lost. She lowered her altitude and spotted a man in a boat below. She shouted to him, "Excuse me, can you help me? I promised a friend I would meet him an hour ago, but I don't know where I am." The man consulted his portable GPS and replied, "You're in a hot air balloon approximately 30 feet above a ground elevation of 2,346 feet above sea level. You're at 11 degrees, 14.97 minutes north latitude, and 100 degrees, 43.09 minutes west longitude." She rolled her eyes and said, "You must be a Democrat." He said, "I am. How did you know?" She said, "Well," answered the balloonist, "everything you told me is technically correct, but I have no idea what to do with your information, and I'm still lost. Frankly, you have not been much help to me." The man smiled and responded, "You must be a Republican." "I am," replied the balloonist. "How did you know?" "Well," said the man, "you do not know where you are or where you are going. You have risen to where you are due to a large quantity of hot air. You made a promise that you have no idea how to keep, and now you expect me to solve your problem. You are in exactly the same position you were before we met, but somehow now it's all my fault." That really tells it like it is. But I don't want to take too much time, so my friend Scott can have more time to expound, because he knows a lot more than I do. But I did spend 7 years in Pierre in the 1970s, worked for the Knipe administration. It was a wonderful experience. I've practiced law in Rapid City now for 30 years. I've been married to the same woman for 37 years, so I know a little bit about family values. And if you look at one of my cards back here, it'll show my family on the back. I've got 4 children and 5 grandchildren. So I too am concerned about the future, their future in particular. Education is my key issue, and when I go to the doors, that's the one thing I hear over and over. We've got to do better with funding education. And I tell people, when I was Secretary of Labor, I was on a team of economic development, an economic development team comprised of a number of heads of state agencies, but because of labor and obviously workforce is a big issue. And we used to hear consistently from CEOs of major companies when they'd be looking at coming to South Dakota, not so much what are your wages, you have cheap wages, and you don't have unions, and there's a lot of that. And that's not really a good thing for us either. But one thing we hear over and over is they look at how we funded education. They all have kids, and their executives and their employees have kids, and they're concerned about funding of education for economic development. If any of you saw my announcement that was in the paper last week, after 4 tries and lots of bombs thrown at the journal to put it in, they finally put it in. But I talked about the fact that in the last session of the legislature, the Sioux Falls Chamber of Commerce got it. They put a bill in, or a proposal in, that should have become law. And so now you have business people supporting education for obvious reasons. So in order to make that work and get that proposal through the next session of the legislature, you need to elect Democrats. And I'd love to go back and serve with Scott in January. Thank you.